My advice to anyone would be, if you're going to play in church, use it to your advantage, upgrade your skill set. Don't you see yourself as a musician? Part of the reason why you don't get a raise or get bigger salaries is because they don't value you. The only way someone's not going to value you is if you don't show yourself as being valuable. He then gets a call from Kanye's people to work on the album at the time that Kanye was working on. And so he was in the studio session. Went to the session, killed it. I didn't meet Ye that day. They had me stay the whole week, right? And we was in the studio from morning to evening. Out of that entire week, he only came for 2 hours. In the 2 hours that he came, I was not there.
Wait, even though y'all are working on his album?
Yeah. Fun fact, when I was in my early 20s, it was me, James Fortune was the minister of music at the church. Zacardi Cortez was the praise and worship leader. Yeah, talk about that. And then my time there overlapped with Aaron Lewis. I would say this, a lot of those older albums I spoke about, I would sit down and play them from start to finish. So don't just go to your favorite song. Don't just go to the one you know of.
What are some obstacles that you faced just in your music career?
Accepting that sometimes no matter what, it's just not your time. That's a hard pill to swallow. Success is when opportunity meets preparation. So just continue to just put the work in. And it'll figure itself out.
All right, what's going on, everybody? We are welcoming Philip Cornish. Should I call you Phil or Philip? Which one do you go by? Phil the keys, I see.
People I say Philip and people say Phil right after. Oh, okay, Phil. So it's one of those things where, it doesn't bother me. Phil's good. And like you said, the brand is Phil the keys, so it works.
Hey, if you go by the government, then I'm gonna say Philip.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We'll call you what your parents named you, man. We got Philip Cornish on keys, the music director, the keyboardist, the producer, composer, arranger, Grammy Award winner, all of the things. You've been in the game for a while now. You've accomplished some amazing things. And I appreciate you for jumping on this call and just being willing to share your wisdom and, some of the things that you know about music with our audience. We have a lot of gospel musicians mainly, but, some jazz, some pop folks, some R&B folks out there. And I'm sure we can all learn a ton from you. So if you don't know, Philip has played with so many artists. I'm going to name a few of them. Probably missing a bunch, but he's played with Musiq Soulchild, Kanye West and the Sunday Service Choir, Kirk Franklin, Usher, Jennifer Hudson, Jessie J, CoCo Jones, music director for Party Next Door, a music director for The Terrell Show. Many, many other artists are on this list that I got. I saw when I was doing my research, you did production work on Empire.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you've played at the Grammy Awards, you've played at other award shows, and you're getting ready. You told me before we got on here, you're getting ready to go on tour as of like a couple days from now. Actually, yeah. So when people are seeing this, he'll probably already be or in Europe or in Asia somewhere. Who are you touring with? Who you getting ready to go on the road with?
So I'll be going on tour with Alessia Cara. She's a pop artist. It's my first. I think it's my second major pop tour. I did Jessie J 7 years ago when I first got to LA, and then so now I get to go back on the other side and have some fun over there.
Yeah. That's amazing. And how did you get plugged in on this tour?
So, ironically, the same guy who connected me with Jessie J 7 years ago took on Alessia Cara, and he needed a keys player, and the timing just worked out. I just finished up with Party Next Door, and so it just aligned, and it's been cool, man. She's a pop, but it's a lot of pop you can hide, and you don't really have to be a strong player because the requirements aren't always as intricate as a lot of other genres or a lot of urban situations. And so, but this one, she's a singer, she's a musician, and a lot of her music is with live instruments. So you definitely need to be able to play or have a strong keyboard background, I believe, to really effectively play this gig.
Okay, got you. So like in some of these pop situations, are you saying you feel like, is it more of a sound design thing where you're focused on making it sound like the record versus actually stretching
playing
out?
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of the pop situations, you don't really have to work very, very hard. It's a lot of just 2-3 finger chords and nailing the parts and the sound design. But when this one, she has a lot of ballads, she has a lot of strong musical component. So the better you are able to play, the better you sound in this situation.
Gotcha. Amazing. Okay, so hey, I got some easy questions to start it off. We're gonna get deeper as we go later on in the night. But to start off, favorite gospel albums of all time. What are some of your favorite gospel albums or even gospel artists of all time?
So I'm a Jason White, Kevin Bond disciple.
So,
I think for all of us. So I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. So my background is very conservative. Hymns, not much contemporary at all. And so when Kirk Franklin came, he definitely ruffled a lot of feathers. My church upbringing, but the sound that he had definitely, to the Christmas album, and then God's Property is where it really just. I think I was 11 when God's Property came out, so that really caught my ear. And then when I started playing in on Sunday churches and had the desire, I'd already started picking up jazz and being able to play by ear. That's when the Kirk Carr For Every Mountain album came out, and then from there I've studied any and everything that Jason White and Kevin Bond produced. All the greats, Marvin Sapp, Diary of a Psalmist, like all the Potter's House stuff. Cedric Thompson, Trent Phillips, like studied players, and specifically players that told a story a certain kind of way. Those are how I was raised church-wise and playing-wise. And so then, but favorite gospel albums, God's Property, of course, Rebirth, Kirk Franklin, come on, man. I already named the Kirk Carr stuff, the Kevin Bond stuff, the Potter's House albums. Then on the more contemporary side or the modern side, Ty and GA, changed everything. Paris was like maybe the first one that you could hear the strong jazz influences in his church. He, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really think there was a strong keys player or main keys player on those gospel albums that had such a strong jazz influence in their playing, but it didn't sound jazzy. So church, it's almost like he figured out a way how to blend the two worlds magnificently. And I think a lot of that had to do with just playing with the right artists who also understood to let Paris loose. So that Ty era definitely, because I'm not a churchy piano player because I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. So I didn't grow up Kojic. I didn't grow, you know what I'm saying? I didn't really, my playing is not going to be churchy or whatever. Having someone like Paris really stood out to me. And then of course, the Jonathan Nelson stuff, Justin Savage, and the Shelton, all of them. So those all and then of course Israel, Aaron Lindsay, and then the current Marvin Sapp. I'm a gospel stan, but specifically I just love strong keyboard players. And then of course, when we get to Danny Witherspoon with Donald Lawrence, since all of them they're heroes to me. And Trent Phillips gets slept on a lot, but I appreciate the moment that Donnie gave him with the when they redid all the old hits.
Oh, the live album that was like in London, right?
Yes, yes. That is a must.
Ridiculous.
That is a must. If you are if you're an upcoming keys player or established one, and you just want to go back through time and just polish up some stuff and see if you go back and get some stuff, I gave you a lot of jewels.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, folks got plenty of stuff to study.
Yeah, absolutely.
Walked us through the history books of gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hey, I appreciate you for sharing that. So something that stands out. So you grew up Seventh-day Adventist. Can you share just a little bit about, I guess, your experience in the gospel realm? Because I know maybe a lot of people know you from the secular stuff that you've done, whether it be from Kanye, even though that was kind of gospel-ish, gospel pop, but the stuff with Kanye or Jessie J or some of the secular artists. Can you share with us something you've done in the gospel realm?
Yeah, and so that's that's why I appreciate the Sunday service, because I was able to tap back into my saying church roots in a lot of ways. We went back and got some of the safe Revelations 19:1, how excellent songs we grew up on was incorporate that with a modern touch, of course. But yeah, so I grew up. I played at all the big churches back home in Houston. Fun fact, when I was in my early 20s, it was me. James Fortune was the minister of music at the church. Zacardi Cortez was the praise and worship leader. Yeah, talk about that. And then,
I didn't know this.
yep. And then my time there overlapped with Aaron Lewis.
Y'all were on Houston?
Yes,
Wow,
yep,
okay.
yeah. Along with Terrence Vaughn. It was, man. So at one time in Houston, you had Terrence Ruffin, you had Aaron Lewis, you had me, you had Lucius Hoskins, who's a big producer. You had this guy named Nicholas Humes, who ended up touring with Ty and recording with Ty right after Paris and them with Brandon Jones. It was all the same church.
Well, oh, not even in the same city. This is at the same church. The same.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, every Sunday for a year and a half, and then Aaron came in, and kind of just we were all young kids that could just play. Aaron kind of came in and taught us structure and
Yeah,
helped us
yeah.
kind of like, hey, this is how you
It's
put
not like
stuff
out.
together. Yeah, exactly. So that was, and then after I left, when I was ready to kind of just spread my wings, I got a call from PJ Morton, his dad, Bishop Morton. He used to come to the church every year for revival, and so I told PJ I was looking to move, and at that time, Bishop Morton had just started the Atlanta location of Greater St. Stephen's shortly after Katrina, and so
Mhm.
they relocated me to Atlanta, and then I was under. That's where my church really grew up a lot because I was able to sit under PJ for about 2 years. And then Full Gospel is a good blend of modern praise and worship, traditional Baptist, and then Kojic elements, which is basically what Full Gospel is. And so then I was in Atlanta for 8 years with Bishop Morton. I traveled with him as his organist, and played on some of the Full Gospel stuff, played at the conferences, sat under Trent when Trent became the minister of music there for a year or two. C-Dub, Loops by C-Dub, we were there. We were there together at Change of Generation. Yeah, Trent Phillips was the minister of music. I was the keys player there. C-Dub was the keys player there. And while he was there, we called him Loop Man. He was making loops.
Still is.
Yep. But that was his aha moment. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
man, like they got me making loops. And he did it because he was just the best at it. And I produced Isaac Carey's second gospel album, Reset. He had some big records on there, Clean His House, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a stronger church background than, people realize. But it's definitely attributed to all those guys. So yeah, me and Zacardi grew up together. And like I said, James was there, then I was with Mitchport. So by the time and then Atlanta's good because the industry is there. There's no industry in Houston, so I was able to branch out and not just be trapped in the four walls of the church. And being on the P, it really helped me, have peace with that because at the time, this is PJ before Maroon 5. This is when PJ was just traveling with his dad and doing his underground stuff, but also, MDing and playing gigs outside the church. And so I was there. I remember the day he got the Maroon 5 call and I watched it happen in front of me. So, to kind of see that, it helps you realize, hey, I can do this too.
Mhm. Yeah.
One more fun fact. So in Houston, Robert Glasper's mom was my home church's piano player. So yeah, right. Yeah, she would play at my church every Saturday. Rob would come. I go over his house because him and my mom was close, and
The
and
7 day.
so yeah. His mom was our church musician for years. And so thing that to say I watched Rob become Rob. I watched PJ become
Yeah.
PJ. So it can't help but fortify my ambitions as a creative. And also you not being the most churchiest player, not feeling inadequate or, feel like I didn't have a place amongst the ranks or that I could not rise because of that, because you know, the church community, especially musicians coming up, they can be bullies. They can make you feel like, what I'm saying, you don't have it if you don't sound like this, or you can't play shout music like this and like that. And so it's just, I appreciate having those influences that were not just beholden to just playing in church to not make me feel like, dang, if I can't be the church's person, how do I rise the ranks in this particular lane? So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about your playing is your unique sound. And so like I mean, you can hear gospel influences, church influences, but there's so much else mixed in there as well. And I think that gives you something unique that sets you apart, which it allows you to do all of these different things. Some I see is like your versatility. You're able to jump kind of from artist to artist, genre to genre, sound to sound, and make it work and add something to it. And that's probably because of the way, you know, you were brought up.
Yeah, I studied classical for 12 years, got bored with it, but I spent enough time there where I can incorporate it, especially on the mainstream side. You don't want to sound too much like a jazz player in a pop setting. You don't want to sound too much like a church player in an R&B setting. You know, you need to be able to morph into what the genre requires. And so I think not being too much of any of those is what enables me to be fluid in a sense.
Okay, got you. So, like, kind of rewinding all the way back to when you first started playing the piano. How old were you, and then like, how did you first get started?
So I only started playing the piano because my family is musically inclined, but none of them, you know, are players per se. So my mom, but she understood the value of it. And later on in life, I found out her grandma was like a chief musician in Jamaica, which is, you know, of course. But she never taught her kids how to play, so it never passed down. And so, but I get it from somewhere. Just it's very rare that it just pops up somewhere in the gene pool. Yeah, like it's there. Later, I wish she would have told me that growing up. I would have like gave me a little bit more um inspiration. I gotta, you know, I got some big shoes to fill. And then I have a cousin over in London who does music at a professional level, but I didn't know none of this growing up. I saw my brother taking piano lessons. My mom pushed us, and I think I was like 3.5, 4. And my piano teacher, she thought I was too small, but you know, I was adamant because I saw my brother doing it and picked it up. Yeah, that was and I started playing at my home church when I was like 8, 9, playing hymns and stuff. And I could read, so that was instrumental. But when you start playing on Sundays, especially in the Baptist church, they don't really do hymns the way they go in the hymn book. They kind of have their own. Yeah, and so that was good for me because, you know, you put a hymn in front of me, I can play it the way it goes, but you know, they take their own liberties.
Okay. Yeah.
So it helped develop my ear, but also but I knew the melody, and because I knew the melody, then that's always carried me even to this day.
Got you. Amazing. Okay, so kind of we spent some time on those gospel influences. One other question I had. So you shared a lot of those gospel albums that you listened to growing up. What are some of like the secular albums, secular artists on the other side that you were listening to, that you were studying growing up?
So for me, coming from a conservative Christian home, they wasn't going for that at all. So I would only hear it, like I really didn't hear secular music until outside of like, you know, scenes in movies, but for real, until middle school when pep rallies, you know, happened. And you know, I remember Soul Food came out, and what is it, the popular I Ain't Mad at You. Yeah, so there's a scene in Soul Food,
Okay.
where, and so it's a Blackstreet song, but it's also it's a Tupac song, I Ain't Mad at You. Yeah. And so there's an iconic piano line that everyone knows. And so like, you know, when I got to middle school, they was asking me, you know, I saw people in the practice room, I was in band, and they were playing it, but my ear told me they was playing it wrong. And I was like, yeah, that's not right. And it was like, you can't do it. And so, right. Had no idea.
But get up. Let me show you how it's done real quick.
Yeah, and so, and this was from them, and from played it like uncanny, and then I saw the reaction, and I was like, oh, this is really a thing, like people.
Yeah.
And so from there, that was my turning point, and then that was my outlet of, dang, I like the sound of this, like where did it come from? So, you know, my friends started feeding me secular music here and there, or carrying the boombox on the school bus, and kind of just hearing what's on the radio. And so from hearing what's on the radio, I was able to catch on.
Gotcha.
Then
You grew up
when
in
I got, man, yeah, right. I'm telling my age, man. Disc players and all that. Used to walk around with the big books of CDs and
yeah.
And so I think, so I always call my generation the bridge generation between, we know a world without technology and a world with technology. Yeah, that was, but it bit me in the behind, because when I started playing in clubs and stuff in my teenage years and my college years, I didn't know a lot of top 40s. I didn't know the Anita Bakers. I didn't know, so it took me a while to like really go back and get all of those. But that Blackstreet, No Diggity, all the Boyz II Men stuff, Music Soul Child, when he first came out, changed everything. D'Angelo, Thornhill. So by the time I got old enough to rebel, that's the era I caught, and which is cool because, I caught Drew Hill, I caught, Jill Scott, I caught Erykah Badu. So, those things helped to kind of like really press forward. So then when I had to go back and get um, Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, I knew who he was. I didn't really know his music like that.
Yeah.
Prince, all that. It was cool.
Okay. Yeah. You got to kind of do a deep dive a little bit later on in your musical journey.
Mhm.
And that's cool though too, because probably like by that point, like your ear was good enough to where you was just listening to that stuff and you was catching it all pretty quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Versus struggling through it if you would have listened to that stuff when you were younger.
And just yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Frustrated. And so you mentioned Music Soul Child. You were on the road with him for a while, right?
Yeah,
Kinda
music
early on in your journey.
Yeah, so when I moved to Atlanta, I was just still in church, and probably 3 years into my Atlanta, I was playing, around the city and stuff like that in different lounges and clubs and stuff like that. But once I wanted to like really get into production and touring, I worked on his album first in the studio with this producer named Lil Ronnie. He was kind of like the first producer who had done some hits that could really, who also came from church, who could kind of show me how to, hey, this is how you carry it over into production. This is how he used to strip it down, take that, 3 chords, just give me 3 chords. That's really challenging me for every idea. Just give me 3 chords. And in the bridge, I'll let you,
open up a little bit.
Yeah, but just park it here. I understood about song structure. So being in the studio with Music Soul Child, who I was a huge fan of, definitely came full circle. And then I went on tour with Akon. That was my first big tour. And then right after the Akon tour, Music was going on tour. He needed a keys player, and they reached out to me through a friend of mine who's on the gig, and they remember me from the studio. So it was an easy yes. And so then I toured the Music for 5 years, and that was like my, that. And with tours, once one happens, another one tends to follow. So like, yeah, at the peak of my Atlanta years, I was traveling with Bishop Morton. I was on tour with Music. I was on tour with The Dream, and I was also in the studio. So it was wild times.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how old were you at that point?
25, 26. Yeah. But it's like the challenge and the respect to, and the crazy part is a lot of the guys that I was seeing in church when I would travel with Bishop Morton, I Love the Country, would be the same guys that I ended up seeing on the road. So the first tour I did with Akon, he was opening up for Usher. So this is prime Usher with Aaron Spears, Buddy Strong, Natural, and all of them. And I had just seen Buddy, because Buddy is full gospel. I'd seen, so it's just like they see me there. Yep, exactly. Yeah, Israel, and then now he's doing, shout out to Buddy Strong, he's doing Dave Matthews. And so, all of that just bolsters your confidence and respect level, because they see you can do it church, and they see you can come on the mainstream side and hold it down. And all that is just good energy. Once you're at that level, everyone can play. So it comes down to details and professionalism, stuff like that.
Right. Something I feel like is not talked about much, and you don't have to go into too many details, but it's the money side of things. Like as a 20-something-year-old, you're on the road now, you playing, with a major preacher / gospel musician, you're playing with major R&B artists. Are you like, how are you feeling financially? How much money you making? Are you super comfortable? Do you feel like there was still like maybe just a lack of knowledge to where, you would eventually make more? Kind of just, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
You mean back then at the time? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, man. Once you get out of church, you really realize there's real money to be made outside of church. I don't want to say look at church differently, but it makes you just think, what I'm saying, that the church could do a lot better job of taking care of their musicians. So it's hard to get raises in church. It's hard to get, a rate. I mean, I don't think any of us expect playing in church to rival touring. No one's saying that. But, I think the figures could be a lot stronger, especially because we get a behind the scenes viewpoint of how much money is being brought in, where the money is being spent, what it's being spent on.
Right.
It's hard not to feel a certain kind of way about that, especially when I decide to go outside of church to make more money to support myself. It's frowned upon. So it's like, do a better job of, and some churches do. I know a lot of guys that have never toured because they never felt the need to, because their church takes care of them. They do annually raises, there's benefits, whatever. And of course, every church isn't equipped or in a position to do that, but a good amount of them are, and they just choose not to. And I've had several conversations with people that feel like musicians shouldn't even get paid to play in church.
That's a conversation that's happening.
Man, now I've been fortunate. I've never really dealt with church hurt to that extent. I've always been in, I believe, situations that I didn't feel like, dang, I don't want to be here. No, I ain't never, or just been done wrong, like some of my homies and some people that we all know. And I think Bishop Morton, I appreciate the opportunity that I had, because, like I said, he had a son who was in both sides. And Bishop has always been a fair person. All the musicians that came to Bishop Morton's church, he appreciated and respected at a high level. So we were always taken care of. But even saying that, rate wise, I made twice as much on the road back then that I was making at my church. And I feel like my church rate was higher than it had ever been when I got to Atlanta. And the crazy part is we didn't even talk numbers. They just, I didn't find out how much I was making until I saw my first check.
No way.
Yeah. And part of that is
with music, Soul Child?
Well, when I moved to Atlanta to play Bishop Morton's church.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I never, because I just, I was ready. Part of it, I was ready to get out of Atlanta. I mean, I was ready to get out of Houston. And so I just figured, I didn't really care how much I was making. And I happened to, make more, almost twice as much that I was making back home. And so that kind of opened my eyes as well. And then, of course, you get an additional pay when you travel with him. So, I didn't have to tour. I just wanted to tour just to get that experience, because I never feel like I was going to be confined to just playing in church.
Right.
It's a lot of different ways to look at it. My advice to anyone would be, if you're going to play in church, use it to your advantage, upgrade your skill set. Don't just see yourself as a musician. See yourself as someone that can learn sound, learn teaching parts, learn administration. The part of the reason why you don't get a raise or get bigger salaries is because they don't value you. The only way someone's not going to value you is if you don't show yourself as being valuable.
Mm-hmm.
When you leave, is your presence felt? Do they miss you? And so I just think you have to really, really look at what all you bring to the table. I remember the first time I asked a church for a raise, and he asked me why, and I couldn't give him a straight answer. And he told me, I'm not mad or upset you for asking for a raise, but you came into this meeting unprepared. So, I'm gonna give you some advice. The next time you want to raise, have a plan, make it make sense. Because at the end of the day, this is church, but this is a business. And so, I'm just throwing little nuggets out there for people that don't look at church as a business. It's absolutely a business. They hire staff, they hold them to a certain standard. So you have to hold yourself to that same standard and bring a professional aspect to your job, and they will treat you differently.
Yep. That's a fact, man, because it's too many musicians out here operating like it's not a business, operating like it's their cousin or their auntie or something, and they pulling up at all times, not showing up on time, not being prepared, not learning songs, not learning the music, and then wondering why I can't make no more money. So it's
not rocket science.
Yeah. It's needed, man. It's the words are needed, man. You speaking to the people. What were some of the first, I guess, like aha moments or I guess milestones in your playing where you felt like you made